Welcome everyone. Just going to give it a minute while our initial crew of people start logging in and getting connected to audio, and then we will get going. I know we're going to have a rush of people right at the start, so I just want as many people as possible to hear the introductions and hear us get kicked off. So we'll just give it a minute while we all get settled in. Okay, good. Thank you all so much for joining us and being prompt. A whole bunch of front of the class kids here at the beginning. I love that. All right. And in the interest of time, we're going to get started. We're going to let people join as they join. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kristen Cordero. I am a Deputy Director in our Business Services Division at the Rhode Island Secretary of State's office under Secretary of State Greg Amore. Thank you very much again for joining us. We are really excited about this workshop that we are doing in partnership with the Rhode Island Division of Taxation. This is really focused on single member LLCs. We're going to be talking about LLCs in general, but a lot of the material we're talking about focuses on single member LLCs. Number one, because it's a super popular structure, it's a super popular tax type. It is also something or a business type where we recognize that you are a solopreneur who are doing a lot of things on your own. You are your own marketing firm, you are your own registration person, you are your own assistant, you are your own tax person, you're your own bookkeeper. It can get confusing. There can be a lot to cover, a lot to understand, and we want to be here to help. So our division, at Business Services Division at the Secretary of State's office, we are the state's business registry. So any LLC that is operating in the state of Rhode Island is going to be working with our office to form that entity. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk through what that looks like. We're going to talk through a lot of the resources that are out there to help you navigate what decisions you might want to make, what you're going to need to do with the state every year to set your business up for success. And then we're going to turn it over to our friend Leo here in the Division of Taxation, who's going to walk through the variations of taxes that you might encounter as you conduct business as a single member LLC. And this is going to include corporate taxes, income taxes, sales taxes. Just a couple of housekeeping items to get out of the way before we get started here. We are recording. You'll see the little blinking red light up in the corner there. We are recording so that we can provide a copy of this to you after the fact to refer back to. This may also be published on our YouTube channel for people to view after the fact. So yes, the chat is going to be open all night. We are talking about taxes. We are talking about business registration. You may very well have some very personal questions for myself or for Leo. You can ask those questions. They may not be answered out loud, either because we run out of time because we have so many people joining us today, or because it's not a question that's appropriate to be answered aloud if it contains private information or some really sensitive information. So please do use that chat feature at any time during the training. If you have a question for me, if you have a question for Leo, go ahead and put it in the chat. We have folks that are monitoring that all throughout the evening. I am joined by my colleague, Gabby Bannon. You'll see her sitting there, and she's going to be helping in the chat too. So if you're having any logistical issues, you need help, she is there for you as well while I am blabbing at you. If you would like to enable closed captioning for today's workshop, you can absolutely do so. Just click the little CC button that you see at the top or the bottom of your screen, and you can configure that to be used however it makes the most sense for you. Okay, housekeeping out of the way, I am going to kick us off. We are going to be talking through what it looks like to start an LLC in Rhode Island, okay? I'm not going to be using a PowerPoint. I'm going to be using our website as a backdrop for our conversation today. because we have a lot of information and tools on the website that are helpful when you are trying to navigate exactly what it is you need to do. You have questions, you need to talk to somebody. We are here for that very reason. The Business Services Division operates the state's business registry. So, as I said, if you have an LLC that is operating in Rhode Island, you are registered with us. You come to our office, you file paperwork to form that LLC, and then you come back to us every year to maintain that registration. We're going to talk through what that looks like. But before we begin, I just want to show you how to get in touch with us. Okay. We are located at 148 West River Street in Providence. We are in the Corliss building right near the main post office in Providence. We are on a RIPTA bus line, and we also have free parking at our offices. You may absolutely come into our office anytime during normal business hours. You do not need an appointment. If you want to file a document or you have questions and you would rather speak to someone face to face, we welcome you to do so. You can also call us. Our main phone number is right here, 222-3040. We have staff on our team that answer the phone when you call, usually within about a minute. So when you call us during normal business hours, you're going to get an answer pretty quickly. We also have an email address that you are welcome to use. It's corporations@sos.ri.gov. And when you send a question or a comment into that email address, if you are emailing us before 4 p.m., you will typically get a response within the same business day. So we try very, very hard to be responsive, to be available for you. Another option that we have, if you are interested in finding out some more about what we do, you have specific questions, you want to sit one-on-one with a member of our staff to help walk you through registering your business or maintaining that business, we offer virtual office hours appointments every Tuesday and Thursday morning. They are free. All you do is visit our scheduler, find an appointment that works for you, set it up, and then join us at that appointment time, and we will be there waiting to help you with whatever questions you may have at that time. Okay, so that is how you get in touch with us. I do want to encourage you to get in touch with us. Use us as a resource. It is what we are here for, and we are happy to do it. Another tool that you may use on our website, I think you probably will use it on our website, particularly if you already have an LLC or you plan to register one, is our corporate database. And I just want to very briefly show you what this looks like and how you might use it as a business owner. You see, it's just a button that I clicked on our website. I did not have to log into anything. I did not have to, do multi-factor authentication or prove that I am a business owner. This is a corporate database that is available 100% free, 24/7 to anybody who cares to look at it. And what this contains is a record of every filing any business has ever submitted to us. So if you have an LLC or you are going to register an LLC, you should understand that everything that you file with us is going to be public information. That said, you also should understand we do not collect any private information. So we will never have your information on file. We will not know that you own the business. That is simply not something that you file with us. We also don't collect your EIN number. We don't collect any tax information or financial information. The information you provide to our office when you're registering a business or filing annual reports with us every year relates to the business entity itself. It is not relating to you, the business owner, or the type of activity you're conducting through this business. All you do with this corporate database is type in the name of your entity, okay? If I type in ABC, I can see every business that is registered in Rhode Island that has some form of ABC in its name, right? We have a lot of LLCs here. If I open any one of these up, I can see all of the details about when they registered, if they have any alternate names on file with us, the various addresses that they have on file, including their registered agent address, which we will talk about in just a moment. And if I select all filings, I can also see a PDF file stamped copy of everything that this business has ever filed with us. So this means when you have a business registered with us, you have full, free, unfettered access to file stamped copies of everything you've ever filed with us, right? If you're going to go to the bank and open a bank account, they probably want to see your articles of organization. You do not have to call us up and request a copy. You certainly can, but you do not have to. All you need to do is click on that link and download the PDF and share it with your bank. Okay. So that is the corporate database. Again, probably something you're going to use, and I very much encourage you to use it to continually check on the health of your business and to make sure that you are double checking your work. When you're filing documents with us, you always want to return to that corporate database a day or two after to make sure it has actually been filed and accepted. If it was, it's going to be in that record in that database. Okay. All right. Another thing I want to mention to you, we are going to be spending most of our time today talking about taxes because it's a much more nuanced topic. Registration has very straightforward steps. If you have questions about registration, we are happy to help explain what things mean. We can walk you through filling out the form. We are happy to provide that support. There's a lot of different ways you can go with tax choices you may make as a business owner. So we're going to try to devote the most time today to taxes. With that said, there's still a lot to learn about business registration, and we do offer a regular workshop twice a month for free, just like you're doing right now. It's called Small Business Basics, and if you are interested in learning more, much more in depth about planning, starting, and maintaining a business in Rhode Island, you are absolutely welcome to sign up for any one of those sessions. We have a training calendar right on our website. And as you can see, we offer it several times every month, right? So the next one is on Monday at 2 p.m. and we have another one on November 14th at 6 p.m. and so on every month. That will repeat. You're welcome to join anyone that works for your schedule. Okay. So Small Business Basics, that workshop that I just mentioned, goes over a lot of information. I'm going to give you a real quick version of it tonight. If we have any questions that, lead us in a different direction, if we need to spend any more time on a particular topic, happy to do so. But again, I want to devote as much time as we can to demystifying taxes. So what I'm going to show you, or what I plan to show you tonight, is these step-by-step registration instructions for an LLC. Okay, this is information that is available in Spanish. If you are more interested or you're more comfortable digesting information in Spanish, all you need to do is click this Layer en Español button and it will translate. We have translated it in-house. It will show you the translated material in Spanish. So again, if you're more comfortable viewing things in Spanish, that is a great option for you. I am more comfortable speaking and reading English, so I'm going to stay on this version of the page. Steps to registering an LLC in Rhode Island. You first need to make some decisions, okay? You need to choose a name for your business. This name has to be unique. It needs to be something that is not too similar or exactly the same as a business that we already have in that corporate database, right? This is a benefit for you. It means that your customers are not going to be confused between you and another business. It's also a benefit for you because once you have registered that LLC, that means that nobody else can come and register a business that has a name too similar to yours, as long as you keep that registration up to date. So once you have filed and recorded your LLC with us, you have built-in name protection. If you are not sure if the name you want to use is already in use, you can check that corporate database. You saw what I did, right? All you have to do is click the button and type in the name you want to use. couple variations on it. If you're not sure if you're capturing or covering all your bases, you can also reach out to us and we will be happy to check that for you for free. Just ask us to do a name availability check and we will happily do so. No charge for that service. Another decision that you need to make is who your registered agent is. And a registered agent is something that every LLC, whether you are a Rhode Island based LLC or an LLC that exists in Massachusetts and is also doing business here in Rhode Island, whether you are an LLC that has one member or two members or 50 members, you have to have a registered agent on file and you have to keep that registered agent information up to date. So I really want to stress the importance of understanding what a registered agent is and what they are for. Okay. A registered agent is very simply a person or a business that has been designated by your LLC to receive official notices from the state and legal service of process. What this means is we're going to send notices to you when filings are due with us. Other state agencies may do the same. Other official government agencies might contact you via this person that you have designated as your registered agent. Most importantly, though, if somebody is looking to sue your LLC, or they're looking to subpoena your records, or they're trying to subpoena you to appear in court to testify on another matter unrelated to something that your LLC has done wrong, they need to officially serve your business with those court paperwork. That that court paperwork. And how they do that is they go to your registered agent and they hand them those documents. That is called legal service of process. So what we are required to keep on file is the name and address of who that person is. The only requirement for who that person can be is that they need to have a Rhode Island street address, right? There needs to be a door that the constable can knock on when they want to serve a copy of that paperwork. And that registered agent needs to reasonably be available at that address during normal business hours. Again, constable comes to that door and knocks. They should reasonably be able to expect that the registered agent answers the door. What this means for you is you are absolutely welcome to serve as your own registered agent. However, the address you provide needs to be the address where you are during normal business hours. So if your LLC is a side hustle and you work from another employer, you work for another employer during the day, that would be the address you would need to give if you're serving as your own registered agent. If you are running your business out of your home, that would be the address you would need to give as your registered agent. I absolutely understand that we probably don't want our home addresses associated with us on a public database, and that is fine. There are other options for what you can do when choosing a registered agent. It can be anyone, as long as they're willing to be designated as a registered agent and they're going to communicate with you, right? Because they're going to get these official notices that they need to tell you about. As long as they have that proper street address in Rhode Island and they're available, they can serve as your registered agent. It can be a spouse, a sibling, college roommate, a neighbor, it could be a cousin, it could be your best friend, it could be your attorney, it could be your accountant. Or if all of that doesn't work for you, it can be a company that you hire to serve in this capacity for you. So I know we have a couple questions about registered agents that Gabby is handling in the chat, but I do just want to reiterate that the registered agent address is not necessarily the address where you are conducting business, right? It doesn't mean that that is the business's address. When you are filing documents with us, you're going to be giving us both addresses. The address for your registered agent, where people can serve a copy of that legal paperwork on your LLC, and your mailing address, your principal office address. That address, your mailing address, can be anything you like. It can be a PO box, it can be a UPS store, it can be a virtual office, it can be an office in another state. There are no requirements for what your postal address needs to be, but your registered agent has to follow these specific rules set out in the law. If you need to update your registered agent, there is definitely a way to do that. There's a form you can use, and we will look at that in just a second. Okay. The next decision you need to make is what structure you would like for your business. There's lots of options out there, but because today we are talking about single member LLCs, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that you have chosen LLC. So what you do once you are ready to register that LLC is you are going to file a document with our office, with the Secretary of State's office, called Articles of Organization. Okay, and I will show you briefly what this form looks like. Again, it's not going to ask you for any information about who owns the business. It's not going to ask you for any personal information. You are going to tell us what the name of the business is. When you are filing an LLC, it's required that you include LLC at the end of your business name. So you cannot just be Kristen's Enterprises. It has to be Kristen's Enterprises LLC or Kristen's Enterprises Limited Liability Company. Okay. You are also going to provide the name and address of your registered agent. So this is what we just went over. Remember, it needs to be a street address in Rhode Island where this named person is located. You are then going to make a decision about how you would like to be taxed at the federal level. And this is something that Leo is going to cover in his presentation. So I won't go into great detail, but you can see that there are three options here. A disregarded entity, which is typically a single member LLC, a partnership, which is a multi-member LLC, or a corporation, which is a option to be taxed separately as its own entity. You also have the option to give the principal office. So again, if you have a mailing address, a PO box that you would like to use, you can put that here. If you don't know yet, it's okay. You don't have to report this to us until a year from when you register, essentially. You also are going to select on this form how you wish your LLC to be managed. And there are two options here, and I want to explain what these two options mean. The two options are to be member managed or manager managed. Member managed means that the owner or owners of the business run the day-to-day. Okay, so if you are a single member LLC and you are doing everything, you're managing the day-to-day affairs, you have financial control, you make all the decisions, you are very likely member managed because you are the sole member and you're managing it. The other option is something called manager managed, which means that you have hired somebody to run the day-to-day operations on the owner's behalf. If you are member managed, all you do is select members and move on. Remember, we do not collect ownership information. A member is an owner, therefore you are not going to put your name here. If you are going to be manager managed, you will select this and you will fill in the name and address of the manager. You should understand that being named as a manager does not mean legally that you own any portion of the business. It is just an indication that you have been hired to run the day-to-day affairs of the business. All you do after that is fill in your contact information so that we can get in touch with you if anything needs to be corrected before we can accept this. You're going to digitally or physically sign if you're going to use a paper form, and then submit, pay for the filing, and be on your way. For almost all filings that are submitted to us, particularly if they are submitted online, the processing time is between 1 and 3 business days. Typically same business day, especially if you are filing online. So you're never going to be waiting a real long time for your documents to be filed. However, you should understand that no news is good news when you're filing things with our office. So you will not receive an email or a letter in the mail telling you that your filing has been accepted. Instead, a day or two after you submit, if you haven't heard from us that something needs to be corrected on that filing, you're going to go to that corporate database that I showed you. search for your business. If what you filed were the initial articles of organization, your business is going to show up in there, right? You can access a file stamped copy of those articles, but you know it's been accepted. The fee to register an LLC is $150. This is a one-time fee. It is not an annual fee you're going to need to file every year. This is just the cost to file those initial articles of organization to form the entity. Okay. All right, the last thing I really want to talk about here is an EIN. And an EIN, or an employer identification number, is kind of a misnomer. You do not have to be an employer in order to apply for an EIN. In fact, if you register an LLC, you are required to apply for an EIN for that LLC. And what an EIN is essentially a social security number for the LLC. Instead of using your personal social security number to identify the business, even if you are the only owner of that business, you'll get a unique number issued by the IRS to identify the business itself. Now, to apply for an EIN, you need to go directly to irs.gov. There is a link right here on our website that gets you right to the online form where you will fill it out and get a response within about 30 seconds of submitting that application. If you Google get an EIN for my business, the first page of Google results are going to be businesses offering their services to get an EIN on your behalf for a fee. I recommend not paying for this service because it is free to get an EIN. You can absolutely apply for one yourself. Of course, if you have questions about what any of the spots on the form mean, you might want to get professional assistance with that, but you can absolutely apply yourself for free online at irs.gov. You do not have to pay for an EIN. I'm gonna let Leo cover a lot of this registration talk when we're talking about how you get on taxes radar with your LLC, how you create accounts, how you pay the required filings or the required payments that are going to be owed because you have an LLC. But you should be aware that every LLC has tax obligations with the state of Rhode Island every year that they are registered, for as long as they are registered, regardless of whether you have actually conducted business throughout that fiscal year, whether you have made a profit or broken even or taken a loss. So if you are registering an LLC today and you're thinking, I'm just going to register it so it holds the name, and then maybe in a couple months I'll get up and running. You can absolutely do that, but you should understand that you are still going to be responsible for tax filings and annual maintenance filings with my office every year for as long as you are registered, because you are registered, because you exist on the record. And this is really because when you register an LLC, even if you are the only owner of that LLC, what you have done is created a separate entity from yourself. An LLC is a corporate structure that allows the business itself to hold property, to hold assets. It can have its own bank account. It can own a building. It can have a company car. It can own equipment. It can have a loan taken out in its name that is separate from you, the business owner. This means if somebody is suing the LLC, it's limited what of your personal assets they can access, because they really are suing this separate entity, this thing that can hold its own money, its own assets, its own liability. There is going to be a benefit to that, right? But there's also going to be a financial charge for that. There's going to be a premium that you pay for that kind of protection, and that is what that is where taxes and annual filings come in. Even if you have not been actually conducting business, you have the ability to conduct business once you are registered. Okay. The last thing I want to show you on registering an LLC is this welcome packet that we have. I won't have time to go through it in detail tonight, but I do recommend, even if you haven't yet registered an LLC, It's a really great resource to check out. It has a ton of extra information in here. It has this great tool where you can keep all of the important information about your new LLC in one place. So when you are trying to find that information, when you're on the phone with somebody trying to get a license or trying to get something approved and they're asking you questions, you have one point of truth to return to. There's also information in this packet about record keeping, about branding, about insurance, about financial accounts, um, about operating agreement for your LLC, which is really a document that outlines how your LLC is governed and who owns the LLC is going to go in that operating agreement, which is not something you're going to be filing with us or any other state agency. It is something you're going to hold in your private records. We have infographics in here that help walk you through registering a business and maintaining that business when it comes to our office, the IRS, the Rhode Island Division of Taxation, and your city or town, wherever your business is located. Information about protecting that EIN that you have gotten, avoiding scams and schemes and solicitations for your business that look like official government forms, protecting your data and your customers' data, thinking about a cybersecurity plan for your business. Employment, if you're going to become an employer, what you need to do with various agencies at the state and federal level. And then quick and easy contact information for a number of state agencies you might need to be in touch with, like us, like the Division of Taxation, like the Department of Labor and Training, other state agencies that might offer you licensing. So if you are an LLC that is engaging in food and you are feeding people, you're going to need licensing from the Department of Health. There's all sorts of state agencies that get involved, and that is absolutely something we can help you navigate. In fact, we have a tool on our website that is called the Business Assistant. And what it does for you, if you have an existing business or you're just getting started or you have a dream, it's going to ask you a series of questions about your business. And at the end, it gives you a personalized checklist of every form you are going to need to fill out with every state agency, all of the state laws and regulations that apply to you, and a number of other guides and helpful documents from the various state agencies that are going to come into your life. To help you navigate exactly what you need to do for your business instead of giving you this very broad, everybody's going to need to do X, Y, and Z. That's included, but also hyper specific things that you yourself are going to need to worry about. There's also contact information here for a number of business support organizations around the state. There are a lot of excellent nonprofits who do wonderful work in helping you navigate business registration and ownership. We have a lot of information on our website about these entities. I encourage you to check them out. But there's contact information here for many of them. Okay. The last thing I want to go over before I turn it over to Leo is the steps you will need to take to maintain your business registration in Rhode Island. There are 3 things you have to do every year with the state once you have registered that LLC. Okay. Number 1, you need to file what is called an annual report with the Secretary of State's office, with my office. For an LLC, this is going to cost you $50, and it is always going to be due between February 1st and May 1st every year that you are registered. So if you first registered your LLC in 2023, your first annual report will be due February 1st, 2024. If you first register your LLC in 2024, your first annual report will be due in 2025. And you will owe that annual report every year until you formally dissolve the entity with our office. And there are steps you can take to properly do that. If your entity fails to file an annual report, we provide lots of notice, we provide lots of warnings, we mail a reminder, we mail a notice that you may be revoked, and then we mail another notice that you have been revoked with instructions on how to fix it. We try very hard to get the word out there that this is a requirement. But since I have you all here, this is a requirement. Okay, so every year, every LLC, regardless of whether or not you have actually been conducting business. If you are registered, you will owe an annual report between February 1st and May 1st. We do send a reminder out in January to your registered agent. So again, if you're not sure who that person is or they're not very communicative with you, you might want to remedy that, because they're the ones who are going to be notified when this is due. They're going to get other notices from us, other helpful tips from us. You want to make sure that they are relaying those to you if you are not serving as your own registered agent. The annual report is a very simple form for an LLC. It is quite literally half a page. It is just this, okay? You are saying the number that we have issued you when you registered, the name of your LLC, what you do, where you are located, your signature, $50, and we'll leave you alone for the whole year, okay? That is all it is. You are not calculating your financials for the previous year. You're not reporting ownership. You're not thinking about the actual business activity you did throughout the year. It is simply about your corporate entity. What do you do? Where are you? And, is your registered agent still up to date? Speaking of which, if your registered agent does need to be updated, you can do so by filing a form with us. You can either change the agent's name. So let's say you have an attorney at a law firm, you're naming that attorney as your registered agent, but then they retire and you are being transferred to another attorney within that law firm. You can update just the name of your registered agent, or you can update the place where that agent is located. If you want to update who your agent is, you will be filing Form 642. If you want to update where your agent is, you will be filing Form 642A. And filing that is going to follow the same pattern as every other filing with us. Within about a day, that change will be affected. You really need to make sure you make an effort to keep this registered agent information up to date. Number one, just because it's legally beneficial for you, right? But also because if you don't, and we mail out that notice to you in January that your annual report is due, and it gets bounced back to us because we weren't able to contact that person at that address, we are going to pursue revocation proceedings against the LLC, and you will have to take steps to reinstate. So keeping a clean record, updating your registered agent, filing that annual report, super important, and honestly, way easier to just keep it up to date, file it on time, than to have to go through the steps to clean up a record that has been revoked. It's totally possible, really not that difficult to do, to reinstate a revoked entity, but avoiding it altogether is best case scenario. The last thing you have to make sure that you do every year with the state as an LLC to maintain your good standing status is to pay taxes. And I know Leo's going to be talking about the minimum corporate fee and other taxes, but again, I just want to reiterate, if you are a registered LLC, you have a tax obligation every year that is at least $400. There is a flat fee that your LLC is expected to pay every year in a minimum corporate fee to the Rhode Island Division of Taxation, and that is not tied to the income that you are making through this LLC. It is a tax because you are registered. Okay. I think we probably have some questions in the chat that I am happy to wade through and answer as I go. I am going to turn the floor over to Leo, unless Gabby, if there's anything that I need to address before I turn it over.
You may have already mentioned this, but I just want to make sure it sticks in everyone's mind that those annual filing requirements are going to be your responsibility until you formally dissolve the business. So until you formally give us a form called Articles of Dissolution, you're going to be responsible for filing the annual report and paying that minimum corporate tax every year. And if you close up business and don't file that form with us, you're still going to be responsible for that. You're just going to be accruing that in the background and also be responsible for late fees and penalties and all that sort of thing. So if you ever decide to close for whatever reason, you please, please, please come back and file those articles of dissolution.
Yeah, thank you for that. And as a reminder, we have, just like we had step-by-step instructions to start that LLC, to register that LLC, we have step-by-step instructions on closing it as well. So if you have questions, you absolutely are welcome to come to us. But Gabby is absolutely right. Closing the loop on this entity that you have created helps to prevent you from experiencing the ghost of businesses past in the future when you're trying to do something else, right? And if you have just allowed this business to become revoked and you haven't formally closed it, every year that it remains in a revoked status, it continues to rack up those filing obligations, the tax obligations, and penalty fees. So you're going to save yourself a lot of money and effort and headache if you just formally close it when you no longer want to use it. It also allows you to close out any liability you may have, so somebody doesn't have the opportunity to come in and mess with you later on, right? So there's some personal liability issues that come into play there as well. Okay, perfect. Thank you all for listening to me. I think I did okay on time. I am very pleased to welcome Leo LaBeouf to the stage here to grab the mic. Leo is going to share his screen. He has a presentation to share with us. Please continue to put questions in the chat. Again, if your questions are hyper specific or something that we can't answer, we may be answering in the chat and communicating with you as we would. We might not answer you out loud, but we will do our best to get you answers as we go. So thank you, Leo, and you can take it away, my friend.
Hello, everyone. As Kristen said, you can see that the Secretary of State and us have worked together on many different things, because you're going to see things that Kristen and Gabby both mentioned that will be reinforced in our presentation when it comes to the tax side of things. My name's, again, Leo LaBeouf. I am the Taxpayer Experience Liaison for the division. I've been with the Division of Taxation for 27 years. And have taken on this new role where the division is attempting to create more of a taxpayer experience and get more education and information out there. We've done a lot of speaking engagements in the past, focused more and centralized more on the preparer community, and we're trying now to get more stuff out to regular taxpayers. So I do have a disclaimer on the screen that you can read, and while you read the disclaimer, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the chat. So tax information in many cases is very specific. So as Kristen said in the beginning, some of the questions that you post in the chat, we may not be able to answer. We will give you an email address. There's several members of our team that are here. They are going to, let me just see. They're going to respond to you with the email address if it's something that we can't answer in person. And when they respond to you, they're going to give you that email address just so that you can follow up and get the right answer. Because this is being recorded, because it's being live, as Kristen said, we don't want to put personal information out, and tax information is very sensitive. We're actually restricted by strict confidentiality requirements, so we don't want to put that information out there. So certainly we encourage you to put information in the chat. If it's something that's generally can be answered, we will certainly answer that, because we learn from your questions as much as you learn from us doing the presentation. So we want the questions. It just may be something that we can't answer live and in person. Okay. So with that said, the disclaimer here just kind of talks about that we're not giving legal advice or tax preparation advice, and that we're truly intent to provide information specifically in this presentation about single member LLCs and how the tax laws apply to those. This covers an agenda. We have a very aggressive agenda, but understand that some of the topics we're going to talk about today are very technical and may be covered by an accountant or a CPA or a attorney that you actually hire to do some of the work for you. But awareness only helps you, right? So making you aware of the requirements and aware of what to look for is part of the process for you. Ultimately, you are responsible for the tax filings, and you're ultimately responsible for what we do. So if it's a little technical, follow, understand, be aware, but we're trying to create a general awareness as we go. Okay. So just a little bit about the division itself. We do administer 59 different tax types. The Division of Taxation is the largest source of revenue for the state. In fiscal year 23, ended June 30th, 2023, we actually had $5.2 billion worth of receipts in those 59 different taxes. We are not going to cover all 59 taxes today, but we are going to try to cover a few of the more important ones. Part of this process is that we're trying to instill voluntary compliance. Our tax administrator, Nina Savage, who's actually in attendance today and listening in, this is one of her favorite slides. And it's one of her favorite slides because the more we have to force compliance, the more expensive, the less efficient it is, not only for us, but really for taxpayers. It becomes more costly for taxpayers to have to go through an audit or face collection action and things like that. So we want to get out in front. We want to be demystify, as Kristen said. We've used that term a few times together. Demystify the Division of Taxation and instill voluntary compliance. Get in front of the requirements. Help you complete those requirements on your own. So who are we intending this presentation to be for? One, startup businesses, right? You don't have any experience with state tax filing requirements, especially for single member LLCs. We want to provide you some information to help you get started and get started on the right track. So some individuals are thinking about starting a business. We want you to have that info so that you make the correct decision. When you make that decision and have as much research in front of you, that's something that only benefits you. Some of you may already have a business and you just want to confirm your understanding because you're smart enough and you've already gotten to that point in the process. You maybe even learned some lessons along the way already, and you just want to confirm you're on the right track. And then we know that there are some people on this presentation who are guiding others in state tax requirements, and some of the more technical stuff may be for you. So what we did here is, this is just some random thoughts, random characteristics that you'll see consistently among every LLC, not just single members, right? It's usually called or referred to as an LLC, but that's an abbreviation for a limited liability company, right? The actual entity you formed is a limited liability company. The owners of an LLC are generally referred to the members. That may be one single member or maybe multiple members, depending on the type of LLC you're forming. The members can have an individual, or it might be another entity that's actually the ownership of the LLC. We're not going to get into that structure so much today, but just aware that it's out there. The entity structures can get very complicated. Sometimes larger entities use LLCs for what we used to refer to as divisions of a company. They'll separate, for liability purposes, those divisions into separate entity LLCs. Again, not the basis of our discussion today. No matter what LLC you form, and Kristen touched on this a little bit, the entity is separate and apart from its members. It is a separate entity. It exists in and of its own. It may be run or managed or have members that own it, but it is a separate entity. So the income and losses from that entity pass through to its members. Those members are going to pay an income tax on their return for any income, or maybe get a deduction for the losses on their return as they file. Unless they've made a special election, which is very rare, where they're going to be taxed as a corporation. And this gets to Kristen's point, the annual charge. Rhode Island General Law 71667 does subject all LLCs to that $400 minimum charge. It has to be remitted to the Division of Taxation every year. And we'll get into how you do that. All members have limited liability status. So you're limited to the investment you make into the entity. And we'll go into that a little more later on as well. And again, even not just the income and losses, but any activity from that LLC flows through to its members. So really, there's three types of LLCs, and it's all determined based on your federal tax treatment. And Kristen showed you when you registered that LLC, you were choosing what type of entity, what type of LLC you were going to choose to be. But when you indicate that on your registration with the Secretary of State, it's only an indicator. It's not necessarily locking you in until you file your tax return. That tax return is what locks you in to what type of LLC you are. We've seen occasions where someone puts down a partnership and then, or tax checks corporation by mistake, and then it turns out they're a single member, right? So the three types are a partnership. In order to be an LLC taxed as a partnership, you have to have at least 2 members. The rarest form is a corporation. You can, as an LLC, choose to be taxed as a corporation, but you have to file a special form with the IRS when you do that, and it kind of defeats some of the purpose of becoming an LLC. So it's very rare that entities do that. But the main type we're going to focus on today is that single member LLC. So it's also referred by a lot of people as a disregarded entity. And that's a disregarded entity only for tax purposes, because as we mentioned in the beginning, they are separate and apart from their owners. So here's the tax treatment of a single member LLC. Everything in the middle here, and can you guys see Chris, shake your head if you can see my cursor, thank you very much, is the similarities. But we're going to start with the differences, okay? So at the federal level, a single member LLC has no filing requirement at the entity level. At the state level, we have that $400 annual charge. So you're going to file that charge with your tax filing on an RI 1065. That's how you report the income and loss, and that's what you're going to use to pay the $400. Speaking of Department of State and us being on the same page, you are required at the state level to obtain an FEIN number. So that FEIN number is what is associated with your RI 1065 filing and allows you it indicates that separation between the individual and the LLC. At the federal level, you're going to include the income and losses on a Schedule C for your 1040. Your individual return, file a 1040. If you're a different type of LLC, there's a different form that you would include the income on. At the state level, you're going to file an RI 1040, but that 1040 flows directly from the income that's reported on the federal return. We're going to walk through an example later in the presentation that will hopefully help with that. And then the similarities. The one similarity between state treatment and federal treatment is that the income tax on any income is paid by the member on their income tax return. That $400 charge, reinforcing what Kristen's already stated, it doesn't matter whether you make $1 million, lose $1 million, have no activity, just purchase an asset and it sits there and does nothing. That $400 annual charge is due. It's not based on the income of the entity. It's just simply a charge for existence. Okay? So I'm going to take a minute to stop and think about what we're going to walk through next is going to be that little more technical piece of things. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to kind of follow along. And if you're not a preparer or you're not preparing your own, this is going to show you what to look for when you sign your return, because every return you file with the division, you're going to sign as the member of that single member LLC. So some things to be aware of, okay? One, you want to check the appropriate entity box. So we have that single member LLC box highlighted there on the screen in front of you, okay? You want to make sure the tax return itself is completed. So the first stop for that is line 1 of the RI 1065 comes directly from the Schedule C that you're filing on your individual 1040, okay? Some of the additions and deductions on line 2 or line 3 of your screen may apply, and those should be filled out as if they do apply. Don't be afraid to ask your accountant why those lines are blank, or what the information is that's on there. Line 5 on this form is an apportionment schedule. So there's a schedule attached to this. And even if the schedule is 100%, all of your income is Rhode Island. You don't do any business in Massachusetts. You don't do any business in Connecticut. That apportionment schedule should be completed. It is 3 factors. It means your property, your payroll, and any sales that you make, any receipts. Okay? The whole apportionment schedule, return, and everything will feed right into a Rhode Island K-1, and that K-1 is what you would use to be able to help complete your individual income tax return. So all those returns should tie. And then with this Rhode Island 1065, you're going to submit your $400 annual charge. Right? So this is a slimmed down, cut version of your Schedule C. Okay, so the Schedule C is on your federal 1040, what you're going to use to calculate your income. So just all these numbers are pure example. Gross receipts, 125,000. I made up a whole bunch of expenses that a lot of LLCs will have, and we came up to a profit or income of $75,000. Okay. So that $75,000 is line 31 of your Schedule C. That $75,000 will come over to a Schedule 1 on your federal 1040. Right here it says business income or loss, attached Schedule C. Assuming you have no other activity, we're looking at a very limited scope in a vacuum. That $75,000 will come down to the bottom of Schedule 1. And you can see the arrow, it flows you right over to your other income line on your individual 1040. You'll get down from there to your total adjusted gross income. Line 11 is that next important line. That line 11 is what's going to come over to your Rhode Island 1040. You will get itemized deductions and things on your federal return. Come up with your taxable income. You'll calculate your tax on your federal return from there. But that $75,000 is the key figure. Okay. So now we're looking at, again, a very limited scope, cut version of what the Rhode Island 1040 would look like. That $75,000 comes over to the front. You're going to get your Rhode Island standard deduction, your Rhode Island exemptions, your Rhode Island taxable income, and now you're going to calculate your Rhode Island tax. Okay? So all of those forms that we talked about should kind of flow together, and you should be able to see when your accountant gives you your tax returns to sign that you can follow and at least understand. You may not know all of the deductions. You may have handed an accountant your paperwork and said, can you file my taxes for me? And they may have done all this work behind the scenes, but you should very limitedly at least be able to follow that information. Okay. So we're going to take a break from the technical stuff for a little bit. All right. Absorb that. Let's look at, a lot of people confuse a single member LLC and a sole proprietor. Okay. And Kristen told us back in her presentation that a single member LLC, you physically have to register with the Secretary of State. We've hit home several times that that entity is separate and apart from its owners. But for a sole proprietor, the owner is the entity. There is no difference between a sole proprietor from the entity itself. You can register as a sole proprietor, a trade name with your local city or town, right? But for a single member LLC, you have to register the entity with the Rhode Island Department of State. Okay, so there is a difference in where you register and what you're registering. A single member LLC has liability protection, so it's limited to what you invest. You're going to invest money to pay your bills, to run your business, and that's what your liability is, whatever money is in that separate entity. A sole proprietor, however, there is no limit. You are the business, so you are personally liable for all the debt, all the information. Everything is related to you. The sole proprietor doesn't have to dissolve its business when it closes. But we already know, because Gabby reinforced it and Kristen told us in their presentation, if you are single member LLC, you're going to have a registration date when you started the business, and you have to have a dissolution date when you close the business. Those fees continue to rack up until that physical dissolution occurs. If you get revoked, so I've heard some people say, well, I'm revoked, so I no longer exist. That's not the case. That name is still there. It's still reserved. It's still an entity, because you can always reinstate that business, right? So that dissolution is important to close that business. And again, for a single member LLC, one more time, currently have to pay $400 a year. For a sole proprietor, other than filing your income taxes, there's no separate filing. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both. And you have to choose which one's for you, but they are certainly not the same. Okay. There are similarities in how they file the income taxes. They both file and pay their income taxes on a Schedule C for federal purposes, and for state purposes, the federal AGI, which includes any of your Schedule C income, flows to your Rhode Island 1040 and is taxed there. Okay, we're going to get technical again for a minute, but I think this is very important. And Kristen and Gabby and I went through this, and I like to say that I kind of blew their mind when we started this discussion, because it was something that they were not aware of. But as a single member LLC, you have a requirement to make estimated payments. So here's the deal. I work for the state. I'm an employee of the state. Every month, every 2 weeks out of my paycheck, the state of Rhode Island withholds taxes from my paycheck, and they remit them to the state. At the end of the year, they give me a W-2 to tell me how much they remitted, and the state will give me credit when I file my income taxes for that withholding. The state law requires that pay as you go is the term the IRS uses, pay as you go mentality. And the same applies to a business. You have to pay estimated payments. If your annual liability is greater than $250 a year, you have to make estimated payments on your individual income tax return. It replaces that withholding that an employer does on your paycheck. If you don't make those estimated payments, you could be subject to an underestimated interest assessment. The rate is 12% per year. So it's a calculation based on when those estimated payments are due. So it's important that those estimated payments are paid. In order to avoid that underestimated interest, you have to pay 100% of your prior year tax liability or 80% of your current tax liability. We're going to go through an example that will show you how to do this. There is a link when the presentation, Kristen and Gabby are going to provide you a copy of this PowerPoint when we're all said and done. Not today, but at some point in the near future. And you can click on the links that are in the presentation, including this one that mirrors IRS requirement. The IRS has a YouTube, believe it or not, they have a YouTube page, just like the Department of State does, right? And it's a cute little video that walks you through what estimated payments are and what those IRS requirements are. And the state requirements mirror that. Part of what you pay in federal tax estimated payments is self-employment tax. And what self-employment tax really is it's the Social Security contribution for a business. As an individual, out of my paycheck every 2 weeks, the state remits money to Social Security on my behalf. They take it from my paycheck and withhold it. That is my contribution to Social Security to determine how much Social Security I'm going to get when I retire. If, as a business, you're not making those estimated payments and you're not filing your federal taxes, you're hurting yourself. You're hurting your ability to collect Social Security in the long run and have the proper income that you make reported. So it's important that you not only do the state estimated payments, but you file the federal. For the state, it's 4 equal installments. Now, there are some seasonal businesses. So let's take a landscaper as an example, right? A landscaper is very busy. Maybe they don't do any plowing. They just do landscaping and they work from April through October, right? With fall cleanups and things. So you might be able to annualize your estimated payments and not have to pay in the spring or not have to pay in the winter, but have to pay extra in the summer and the fall. So there is an annualization process. It gets a little more detailed. That's something you really should probably check with an accountant or a tax professional for. And we have options on our tax portal to be able to, for you to make those estimated payments right in our portal. You actually, with the portal, you can schedule them up to 364 days in advance. So you could log in after you file your tax return for the year and say, you know what, I'm going to make my first estimate. I'm going to schedule the next 3 so I don't forget, and have it automatically deducted from your taxes to make from your bank account so that you don't miss those payments. So you can check with our portal tax section on that, and their contact info. We're going to talk about where our contact page is, and you can get that information there. So here's our example. Okay, you had a business in 2021. And you have a business still now still in tax year 2022, okay? In 2021, your profit from your business was $65,000. So you owed a tax liability of $1,939. In 2022, your business grew. So now you had $85,000 worth of income. Your tax liability for 22 was $2,707. So estimated payments are required because you're self-employed. You don't have an employer who's doing that withholding for you. In order to not get charged under estimated interest, in order to meet your actual estimated payments requirements, you have to pay the lower of 100% of the prior year, which is at $1,939, or you have to pay 80% of the current year. So 80% of $2,707 is $2,166. And I did the math on the screen so I wouldn't have to do the math under pressure talking to you guys. So it's there on the screen. So your requirement to not meet underestimated interest is $1,939. You divide that by 4, you pay that in the 4 quarterly installments, and you won't get charged underestimated interest. When you file your tax return and you owe $2,707, you do have to pay the difference by April 15th, but you won't get charged that extra interest, underestimated interest. So now let's look at another example. 2021, you were working for an employer, okay? I worked for the state of Rhode Island. I owed $2,314 on my taxes, but my employer withheld $3,000, so I actually got a refund. But in 2022, I decided to leave my employer and start my own business. So I made the same amount of money. I got lucky. I started that business and hit the ground running and was able to make the same amount of money. Now, deductions go up year over the year. So my tax actually dropped to $2,301. So you might say, well, I didn't need to make estimated payments. My tax dropped, but you do. In order to be able to not get charged underestimated interest, it's based on your tax liability. It's not based on the amount of withholding you did last year or the amount of estimates you didn't do this year or did do this year. So you would have been required to pay the lower of 100% of last year's liability, $2,314, or 80% of the current year, $1,841. So that's $1,841. If you had made $1,841 worth of estimates, you wouldn't get charged with that underestimated interest. So I know this got a little technical, but we wanted to make sure that we pointed out the fact that starting a business, you do have to look at your tax situation. It doesn't mean that you get a free pass on making estimated payments. Okay? Due dates. The Rhode Island 1065 we talked about with the $400 annual charge, due April 15th. The 1040 for your individual filing and paying the actual income taxes due April 15th. You've got individual estimated payments. Those 4 estimated payments are due just about quarterly. We use the term quarterly, but the dates are a little off. It's April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, and January 15th. So let me just summarize LLCs for a minute. And then Kristen, maybe we can try to look at some of the questions before we move into the other taxes to see if there's anything we can answer. So all LLCs are required to file with the Division of Taxation. The type of LLC determines the required form. All LLCs not taxed as a corporation, including single member LLCs, are subject to that $400 annual charge. The federal and state requirements differ. They are not the same. A single member LLC and a sole proprietor are not the same thing. The income, the losses, the activity of an LLC flow through to its member and is reported on the prescribed form. For a single member LLC, that activity is reported on RI 1065, and then the members report on their RI 1040. And we do have an appendix at the end that you'll have access to that will give you pertinent information about other types of LLCs. So, Chris, I'm going to try to see here if I can look through quickly and see if there's anything in here that I can answer.
I'm sure you will be shocked that people are confused about estimated payments like Gabby and I were when you when you first brought that to our attention. So there are several questions relating to timing on estimated payments when you are starting a brand new business. So I don't know if you just want to talk generally about that or if you want to answer any of the specific questions that are waiting in the chat about that.
Yeah, so the timing of estimated payments, the due dates are there on the screen in front of you, right? And those estimated payments are due as soon, whenever you start that new business. So it depends on your tax situation the year before, right? So we talked about this 100% of the prior year or 80% of the current year. You do have to look at your withholding only from a standpoint, if you have withholding, it offsets the amount, it reduces the amount of estimated payments you have to pay. So if, for example, I was filing a joint return and this 2022 $75,000 was my wife and I, and if she had $1,000 worth of withholding, well, I'm only required to pay an additional $841 in estimated payments. But I tried to keep the example simple and assume that we had no withholding. So you've got to look at the prior year and the current year. I do see a question here about the where was it? I saw something in here about not the timing of estimates. How you check on the status if you know what your estimated payments have been made. You can certainly contact our tax assist line, and they can certainly see help you with how much estimated tax you've already paid. They will not have access to how much withholding has been paid on your behalf, but they can check to see if you had any estimated payments.
So just to reiterate, Leo, if I quit my job today, which I'm not planning to do, I like my job very much. If I quit my job today because I have a business idea and I'm going to start it tomorrow and I'm registering my LLC tomorrow, I need to pay in estimated payments the same amount of withholding essentially that I was paying in through my employer this year, even if I don't know how much I'm going to make in my brand new job, because the state is expecting that I am continuing along the same path I was on.
So not so much the withholding. So if we look at the example on the screen now, right? I had $3,000 worth of withholding from my job in 2021. I have to pay either 100% of the prior year or 80% of the current year. If I don't know what I'm gonna make, the absolute safe harbor is pay 2314 divided by 4. That was my tax liability on my return the year before, and I'm covered. I paid 100% of last year. When I file my taxes, if I only made 75,000, I will have only have had to pay 1841, so I can get a refund of that overpayment, or I can carry it forward towards next year to offset next year's estimated payments, whatever it might be. But the safe harbor is always 100% of the prior year. And most people, that's just what they do. To cover themselves, they fill out their taxes. I know on April 15th what last year's liability is. I'm just going to divide it by 4. And that's what I'm going to make for estimated payments the following year. And you will always be safe if you pay 100% of the prior year. Does that make more sense, Kristen?
Does, yes. And I think we had a lot of questions relating to that concept. So essentially, you don't need to guess what it is you are going to make. You're basing it on the information you already have about what you have made. Even if it's going to change throughout the year, you reconcile that when you file your taxes.
Correct. The 100% safe point is take the prior year liability and divide by 4. You will always be safe that way.
Okay.
Is there anything else you think in there quick that I should address before we move on?
There's a question.
We only have about 15 minutes, so I don't want to.
Yep. There is no option to just pay one lump sum for those estimated payments. Is that?
An individual could on April 15th pay the lump sum.
And
But
you
you're
would
giving the state your money for a whole year to hold on to, when you might have been able to use the other 3 quarters for something, right? To pay bills, to pay whatever. Put it in your bank account, have the money withdrawn from that bank account by scheduling them on the portal, and get the little bit of interest that's 0.5% that the banks are offering right now, whatever it might be. You're still better off than having the state hold your money. And I can see one person probably from our team who's like saying, no, give us all the money up front. But no, that's to your benefit.
And it just makes, if you're unsure, especially if you're just starting out and you're unsure what your income is going to be, doing something like that safe harbor option will help you feel comfortable for your first year in business tax wise. You don't have to worry about at the very end of the year, come tax time, dumping a whole bunch of money in to the state because you've been doing it all along. I don't think there's any other, I mean, there's questions in the chat, but I think we probably ought to get to sales tax because this is going to be a biggie.
Okay. So let's walk through, let's start with, we do have some slides on other taxes, but we're going to start with sales tax. So when is a sales tax permit required? Every business making a retail sale or renting living quarters. So that's really like a hotel, or in some cases you might be doing Airbnb, you might be doing different things with renting living quarters. So the renting living quarters is really renting space. And it's less than 30 days. So if you're renting an apartment, that's not considered a retail sale, right? Because you're renting it for a month-to-month lease, more than 30 days, whatever it might be. So making sales at retail. So what's a retail sale? It's sale, lease, or rental of tangible personal property. And we have a definition there of tangible personal property. Something that can be weighed, measured, felt, touched. Basically, it's something tangible, something you can hold. It also, tangible personal property also includes, or retail sale also includes, pre-written computer software, specified digital product, and some services that are taxable. So I know we had a question very early on about medical services, and I'm going to suggest that, and I think Amanda already responded to somebody, that you actually email us on that question, because medical services, it truly depends on what you're actually, that there is nothing else provided with the services. So getting more details will help us give you a better answer on that. Because something is tax exempt, though, does not mean that you're not making sales. You don't have to take a sales permit. You still do if you meet the definition of retail sales. So you might be selling something for resale. It still meets the definition of retail sale. And there's no fee to renew your permit annually. You do have an annual renewal. There is no fee. There's no longer a fee to take out that sales permit either. How do I obtain a sales permit? So we have a link on the screen to register your business online. If you set up your LLC, it's the same link that Kristen showed in her presentation as part of the steps to register with the Division of Taxation. If you're just a single member LLC and you're not, it doesn't require a sales permit. So you're, let's say, doing a consulting business. You're just strictly doing consulting, no sales, no anything, just strictly consulting. Or you're an accountant, a CPA. That LLC would register the first time you file the RI 1065. There's no pre-registration process. But we're gonna show you in a slide in a little while the different types of things that require that application. A sales permit is one of them. There's a link here on the screen to get more details about sales and use taxes. We have a whole webpage that has a bunch of frequently asked questions on it. One of the things we do want to make sure you're aware of, and again, this works with that voluntary compliance theme, right? Is that you have to monthly or quarterly file a sales tax return. It's called the STR. It is available on the website. If your average sales are greater than $200 a month, you have to file by the 20th of the following month. So any sales I make in October of 2023 are due November 20th of 2023. If my monthly sales tax averages less than $200 a month, you can file quarterly. However, when you register that new business, you're going to automatically be defaulted to monthly. You have to file monthly for 6 months to show that filing history, to show that, you know, I'm only selling t-shirts and that's all I'm selling. So for 6 months, my t-shirts were not taxable. I didn't have sales tax greater than $200. You can send an email to our excise tax section and we can look at your account and confirm that the $200 is there and we can drop you down to quarterly. But that first 6 months is automatically going to be monthly. You still have to file a sales tax return even if your returns result in zero tax due, and the tax rate for sales tax is 7%. What's taxable? So on the screen, all tangible personal property is taxable. Certain enumerated services are taxable. So there's a list there. Specific services that are statutorily determined to be subject to sales tax, pet care services, taxi cab, limousine services, all your Uber and Lyft if you're a gig economy taxpayer, investigation guard services. The real question you should be asking, though, is what's not taxable? Because if all tangible personal property is taxable, it's only things that the statute says are not subject to sales tax that are exempt are that. So, for example, clothing is one of those items. If one article of clothing is greater than $250, it is taxable. But the normal everyday clothing that you buy is not subject to tax. Food and food ingredients. So when you go to the supermarket and you buy your produce, your apples, your bananas, that is not subject to sales tax. But those are specific items that are enumerated in the statute. We do have a link to the statute that goes through all of the exemptions. Certainly, if you have a question about a specific item, I would encourage you to email our excise tax section. You'll see their email address at the end of the presentation. So these are other taxes that would require you to complete a business application and registration form. If you are subject to meals and beverage tax, you are also subject to sales. So meals and beverage tax is specifically around prepared food, restaurants and caterers and businesses that sell two or more food items made into one item to the general public for consumption. Okay. The litter permit fee is something that has been in existence for a number of years. It is still in existence up until 12/31/2023. The legislature actually did remove it from the statute as of January 1st, 2024. Okay. A point we really wanted to kind of hammer home today is trust fund taxes. So trust funds are taxes that are collected by one taxpayer from another taxpayer and are held in trust for the state. That is not the business's money. So when you collect sales tax, when you collect meals and beverage tax, when you withhold income taxes from an employee as the employer, those are trust fund taxes. That is the state's tax money. And you're holding it in trust. You are required to submit that tax money over to the state on the due date. No extra holding. There are interest and penalties that you're subject to. And there's a good discussion in one of our newsletters that are linked there linked here in the presentation on trust funds. Here are some examples of trust funds. I kind of went over those, but sales tax, when you collect it from your customer as a retailer, you are required to submit that over to the state by the 20th of the month. Okay. And withholding taxes, if you're an employer and you're withholding it from your employees' wages. Okay. Those trust funds must be remitted over to the state without exception. There are penalties for a misappropriation of trust funds, including holding a responsible officer personally liable. So we talked about an LLC creates that personal protection, creates that liability protection, correct? But trust fund taxes are not something part of that protection. If you as an employer or you as a business collect those taxes, if you are the member, or in the case of a single member LLC, you're the owner who's responsible for those taxes to be withheld, and you don't remit those over to the state, you can be personally held personally liable. So trust fund taxes are something not to mess with. Remit them over to the state, get them to the state by the due date, keep yourself out of trouble. So some additional resources we have for you. Again, we stated at the beginning, and I know it's on the Secretary of State's website, we are not attorneys to give you legal advice. We are not tax preparers to give you tax advice. We do inform you of the law. We will help work through the law with you, but we do not give specific advice. We do not prepare tax returns. The IRS has a website. They do not make recommendations either. However, you can put in your zip code and the IRS will return a list of licensed preparers to be able to help you with tax issues. That contact us link brings you to the Division of Taxation's contact us page. It has the contact information and email address for every department that we have, every section. The guidance link can take you to a lot of advisories and a lot of newsletters and a lot of information that we've published for issues that we see or for due dates and deadlines and things that are coming up. And the compliant taxpayer profile there is a new thing we've come out with to try to help taxpayers comply. You can click on that. We have the profiles for retailers, online retailers, contractors, artists, employers, and a few others, manufacturers, restaurants, that can help you, give you a roadmap to comply. We're hoping to springboard off of that and actually create an online tool that will be able to customize that for you. But right now we have some PDF versions to get us started. Links to different pages within the division's website, resources for business. If you go to our website, you can see the drop-down menu here and click on businesses, and it'll give you a variety of links to different resources. This is a look of what one of those compliant taxpayer profiles look like. So an online retailer, I specifically chose the one that has a single member LLC, since that's our discussion today. Talks about gross receipts and apparel of t-shirts, and no employees. And this gives you what information you would need to be compliant, when to file. Notice it has estimated payments on there. And it does talk about how initially you would have to file monthly, and that you can elect or request to file quarterly. We're getting towards the end. This is an important slide though. Record keeping requirements. The Secretary of State, I saw on their website, they also have some guidance in their LLC packet, welcome packet about record keeping. This is what we would expect you to do for record keeping, and there is a link at the bottom here that will give you a printable version, trifold printable version of that record keeping guide. So we're running out of time. I just want to show you that if you want to get email updates, and I know the Secretary of State has one as well for their own stuff, but you can simply, when you get the presentation, click on the QR code with your phone, or go to our website, look for this little blue box at the bottom, enter your email address and click sign up. We do typically have preparers and attorneys who sign up, but there's nothing stopping you as a regular taxpayer from getting updates from us. We encourage it. Better to have more information and as much information as you can. So all the LLC stuff we talked about today in the first half of our presentation, if you have any questions on it, you can email our corporate tax department. It's their contact information on the screen here. And any of the sales tax and other taxes from that section, you can certainly email our excise tax section, and they'll be the resource to help you with that information. So with that, this is just the appendix of other stuff. That's it.
Leo,
So Kristen, I know we have a lot of questions. I can see the chat blowing up.
Amanda has been very diligent. I think the majority of the questions that are left are pretty specific questions about what is taxable and what is not taxable. So I know Amanda's working through responding to those, but essentially, if you have a question about whether something you are selling is taxable in Rhode Island or not taxable in Rhode Island, you want to reach out to that email address Amanda has put in the chat. It's tax.excise@tax.ri.gov. Explain exactly what it is you sell or plan to sell, and they will help walk you through what is and is not taxable so you can be prepared for what that is.
The one thing I'm going to add to what Kristen said is the more detail you put, the more you'll get, the more direct answer you'll get. I will tell you about taxation and a lot of times the goods themselves, especially I saw one question about digital goods, online digital media. The devil is in the details, right? I'm sure most of you have heard that saying. The details are important. Specifically, telling us what it looks like, what it is, makes a difference. Just as an example, a digital photograph may not be taxable, but a digital book is. And the statute might get very specific. So certainly look at that information and provide the excise tax section with as much information as possible. So I do see some positive comments coming through, and that's great. We want to be able to provide the information. Kristen will forward the presentation once we're done. And we do appreciate you adding the comments, asking us the questions, send us all the information. This is something that I think Kristen and I have talked about trying to do again. So if you have friends who couldn't make it today, and there was a lot of signups compared to who came, certainly encourage them to come. We want to help people. We're all public servants, and we're here to serve. We're here to help.
That is very true, and I think honestly, I think you will not find a state tax department that is more helpful than the folks that we have here in Rhode Island that really are willing to help and answer questions and demystify taxes for Rhode Island individual taxpayers and businesses. So use them as a resource if you have tax questions. If you don't have a contract with a qualified professional and you just have a question about what you are particularly doing, they can point you in the right direction. Do not be afraid to ask. They're very, very helpful. Leo, I want to thank you very much for spending a Wednesday evening with us, especially after Halloween candy high that we all had yesterday. We should all be in bed early sleeping tonight. We will follow up, as I said, with a copy of the recording, a copy of the presentation materials, the links to a lot of the things that we are referencing tonight. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Leo's team, to my team. We really are here to help, and we want to make sure that you are as successful as you possibly can be, and you will only be successful if you're armed with the knowledge of what's expected of you, so you don't have to waste all of your time worrying about what you need to do. You just have it right in front of you, ready to go. Thank you everybody so much for sticking around with us and listening. I am going to turn off the recording, but I'll stick around in the chat for a couple of minutes if anybody has any lingering questions for me. But if you do not, I bid you adieu. Have a wonderful night, everybody, and thank you so much.